I'm Brooke Mitchell, 28, and 6 months ago, I decided to plan the ultimate family trip to Dubai to celebrate my parents' 30th anniversary. I spent $26,000 of my own money to create what I thought would be unforgettable memories with the people I love most. My dad has always been my hero, my biggest supporter. I never imagined the trip I spent half a year planning and completely funding would become the source of the deepest betrayal I've ever experienced. If you've ever had someone take your generosity for granted, you'll understand what happened next. Share where you're watching from in the comments and subscribe if family drama hits close to home. Growing up as the daughter of Thomas and Diana Mitchell was mostly wonderful. We lived in a comfortable suburban home in Connecticut. Not extremely wealthy, but certainly privileged enough that I never worried about necessities. My dad worked as an engineering manager, while my mom taught elementary school. While other teens were sneaking out to parties, I was organizing study groups and participating in extracurricular activities that would look good on college applications. And landed a job at a prestigious financial firm in Boston. By 26, I was earning six figures, had paid off my student loans, and was building a solid investment portfolio. My parents were proud, especially my dad. He would brag about me to his friends, calling me his financial wizard. Those moments meant everything to me. Jake took a different path. Sales associate, he tried them all with equal amounts of initial enthusiasm followed by inevitable boredom. Despite our differences, I love my brother. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice the pattern in our family dynamics. When Jake needed money for rent or to cover his car insurance after spending his paycheck on concert tickets, my parents never hesitated to help. They called it supporting his journey. When I needed help with unexpected grad school expenses that my scholarship didn't cover, Grandma Ruth once told me, "They're harder on you because they know you can handle it. Jake needs more support." I accepted this explanation, though it never fully sat right with me. Then Jake met Megan Taylor. They started dating in January, and by April, he called to announce they were engaged. I was shocked. 4 months seemed incredibly fast, but tried to be supportive. And her first question to me was whether I thought investing in luxury handbags was a good alternative investment strategy. My parents instantly adored Megan. My parents had been married for almost 30 years, a milestone they'd mention occasionally with wistful comments about someday taking that big anniversary trip. I knew they'd never splurge on something so extravagant for themselves. Mom would always say things like, "We're saving for retirement," or "that money could help Jake get established." I decided to make their dream a reality. I'd been to Dubai once before for a work conference and remembered my dad's fascination with the photos I'd shared. "The engineering of those buildings is incredible," he'd said, studying my pictures of the Burj Khalifa. Mom had been equally impressed by the luxury shopping and beaches. Planning the trip became my obsession. Every evening after work, I'd research hotels, experiences, and transportation options. I wanted it to be perfect. I decided to include my grandparents because I knew how much it would mean to Dad to have his parents there for this celebration. And of course, Jake would come too, despite our differences. This was a family celebration. I announced my gift at last Christmas dinner. "Mom, Dad, for your 30th anniversary this August, I'm taking all of us to Dubai for 10 days. My grandparents were moved to tears. That night, as everyone was leaving, Dad pulled me aside. "Brooke, I don't know if you understand what this means to me. Not just the trip itself." Our family group chat was filled with excitement about the trip. I'd share updates about the itinerary, and everyone would respond with enthusiasm. I booked everything under my name since I was handling all the payments, occasionally dipping into my savings when my monthly budget wasn't enough to cover the installments. Looking back, "She just mentioned that it sounds amazing," he said casually. "She's never been anywhere like that." I explained gently that I'd planned this trip before Megan was even in the picture, and the budget was already stretched to include 6 people. The conversation moved on, and I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The $26,000 I spent on the Dubai trip represented a significant portion of my savings. As a financial analyst, the irony wasn't lost on me. I advised clients on prudent investment strategies daily, Yet here I was, spending almost 20% of my liquid assets on a family vacation. But some things transcend spreadsheets and ROI calculations. I'd been saving aggressively since landing my job after Wharton, living with 2 roommates in a modest apartment despite my salary, bringing lunch to work instead of joining colleagues at trendy bistros, limiting my wardrobe to quality basics rather than following every fashion trend. My friends teased me about being too frugal, but those habits allowed me to build a solid financial foundation and fund special experiences like this trip. Working with a travel agent specializing in luxury Middle Eastern travel, I crafted an itinerary that balanced iconic Dubai experiences with personalized touches for each family member. The process was exhilarating. Each evening after work, I'd review options. I chose connecting rooms for my parents and grandparents, with Jake and me in separate rooms on the same floor. The hotel had multiple restaurants, a stunning infinity pool, and traditional Arabian architecture that would impress Dad's engineering mind. The 10-day itinerary I created was meticulous. Day 1, arrival and welcome dinner at Al Bayt, the hotel's Arabic restaurant. Day 2, Burj Khalifa tour, including access to the exclusive 148th floor observation deck and Dubai Mall. Day 3, desert safari with sunset camel rides and traditional dinner. Day 4, Dad and Grandpa's special day, golf at the Emirates Golf Club while Mom, Grandma, and I enjoyed a spa day. Day 5, yacht cruise along Dubai Marina and Palm Jumeirah. Day 6, Old Dubai tour, exploring the historic districts and Gold Souk. Day 7, Abu Dhabi day trip to see the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque. Day 8, free day for shopping or relaxation. Day 9, special anniversary dinner at Atmosphere, the restaurant inside Burj Khalifa. Day 10, departure. When I presented the detailed itinerary to my family, their reactions made every penny worth it. Mom teared up at the spa day, Dad and Grandpa high-fived over the golf plans, and Grandma Ruth kept saying, "I never thought I'd see such places at my age." Even Jake seemed genuinely excited, especially about the desert safari and yacht cruise. I created a dedicated trip email address where all confirmations would be sent, then made a shared digital folder with everyone's e-tickets, hotel reservations, and activity bookings. I arranged transportation from the airport, dinner reservations that accommodated Grandpa's dietary restrictions, and even researched the best photography spots to capture family memories. For Mom and Dad's anniversary dinner at Atmosphere, I worked with the restaurant to arrange a special cake and champagne toast. I coordinated with the hotel to have their room decorated with rose petals and a framed photo from their wedding day on their anniversary night. The family group chat buzzed daily with questions and excitement. Mom, what's the weather like in August? What should I pack? Dad, do you think I'll be able to see the engineering details on the Burj Khalifa tour? Grandma, will there be places to sit and rest during the mall visit? My knees, you know. Jake, can we try sandboarding during the desert safari? I answered each question patiently, my excitement building with theirs. Dad started sending me articles about Dubai's architectural marvels, while Mom researched cultural customs so we wouldn't inadvertently offend anyone. My normally technology-averse grandparents even downloaded weather apps and currency converters to prepare. During our monthly family dinners, the Dubai trip dominated conversation. "Brooke thought of everything," Mom would say proudly. "She's even arranged for special pillows for your neck on the long flight, Dad." "That's my girl," Dad would respond, squeezing my shoulder. Always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. Those moments reinforced my belief that this trip was the perfect way to express my gratitude. I'd worked hard to build my career, but I never forgot that my success began with the foundation they provided. About 2 months before the trip, Jake started dating Megan. She seemed to appear at every family gathering after that, always finding ways to insert herself into conversations about the trip. "Dubai sounds amazing," she'd say, examining her freshly manicured nails. But as weeks passed and their relationship progressed rapidly, her interest seemed to intensify. "What hotel did you say you're staying at again?" she'd ask. Jake mentioned that Megan had recently been laid off from her dental hygienist position due to the practice downsizing. It's actually perfect timing, he said, his arm around her shoulders. Now she has time to shop for the trip. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. What trip? Dubai, obviously, he laughed, as if I'd asked a silly question. I carefully set down my fork. Jake. But she's going to be family too, he said defensively. We're engaged now. It was the first I'd heard of an engagement. Based on the surprised expressions from my parents and grandparents, it was news to them too. Megan thrust her left hand across the table, displaying a small diamond ring. We were going to announce it tonight, she said. Jake insisted. It could be like a pre-honeymoon. I tried to explain the logistical and financial impossibility. The bookings are already finalized for 6 people. What's another few thousand to you? His words stung. Another few $1,000s was a significant amount to anyone, regardless of their salary. More importantly, the entire trip was planned around our family of 6. Adding another person changes the dynamic completely. Mom jumped in, attempting to mediate but clearly siding with Jake. Surely there's some way to work this out? Megan is going to be part of our family soon. I looked to Dad for support, but he avoided my gaze, suddenly very interested in his mashed potatoes. Grandma Ruth, always perceptive, changed the subject to wedding plans, temporarily defusing the tension. But as we cleared the dishes, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "You stand your ground. Dear, it's your gift, your terms." As I drove home that night, anxiety gnawed at me. What should have been the final weeks of joyful anticipation had become fraught with tension. I called my friend Alicia, who had always been my voice of reason. "You're not being unreasonable," she assured me after I explained the situation. "You planned and paid for a specific trip. You can't just add people at the last minute, especially when you're footing the entire bill." Her validation helped, but the knot in my stomach remained. I sensed that this issue was far from resolved. I was right. 3 weeks before our scheduled departure to Dubai, Jake and Megan made their engagement official with a small party at my parents' house. The timing struck me as suspiciously close to our trip, but I pushed the thought aside and brought an expensive bottle of champagne as my gift. The engagement celebration was intimate, just our immediate family, Megan's parents, and a couple of Jake's friends. Mom had transformed the backyard with string lights and flowers. Megan deftly steered the conversation toward the Dubai trip at least 3 times. "I was just looking at pictures of that hotel you're all staying at," she said, directing her comment to the entire table though her eyes fixed on my father. "The royal suites look absolutely incredible." "We're not in the royal suites," I clarified with a tight smile. "Those cost thousands per night." Still, she continued, undeterred. "Even the regular rooms look amazing. Jake showed me all the activities you've planned. That yacht cruise sounds fabulous." My dad, who had been unusually quiet around me lately, suddenly perked up. "You know, Brooke, it would be nice if Megan could join us. Since she and Jake are engaged now, she's going to be part of the family." The comment landed like a stone in my stomach. I took a measured sip of water before responding. "Dad, I understand that. But adding another person 3 weeks before departure would mean restructuring all the reservations. Everything was booked for 6 people months ago. But surely they can accommodate 1 more person?" Mom chimed in. "It's not that simple," I explained, trying to keep frustration from seeping into my voice. "The hotel rooms are configured for our original group. So book another room," Jake suggested casually. As if I were complaining about a minor inconvenience rather than a logistical and financial challenge. "The hotel is fully booked for those dates now," I said. "August is high season for Europeans visiting Dubai. I was lucky to get our rooms when I did." "Well, you're some hotshot financial person," Jake said, his tone sharpening. "I'm sure you could figure something out if you really wanted to." The table fell silent. Megan's parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Jake," Grandpa Harold said firmly, breaking the tension, "your sister has been incredibly generous. She's not obligated to add last-minute guests to a trip she's planned and paid for entirely herself." Jake flushed, but didn't back down. "I just think it's weird that my fiancée is being excluded from a family trip." "She's not being excluded," I countered, grateful for Grandpa's support. "The trip was planned before you even met her." Maybe you could just pay a little more, Jake pressed, ignoring my point entirely. You have such a great job, and Megan just lost hers. This would mean so much to us. The entitlement in his voice made my blood simmer. I'd worked incredibly hard for my financial stability, taking extra courses to graduate early, working internships while my peers enjoyed college summers, putting in 60-hour weeks during my early career years. Now my brother expected me to casually spend thousands more dollars just because I could technically afford it. Mom, always eager to smooth over conflicts, especially where Jake was concerned, jumped in with what she clearly thought was a helpful suggestion. What if we rearranged the sleeping arrangements? Jake and Megan could share his room, and we could make other adjustments. That doesn't solve the issue with the booked activities, I pointed out. And the hotel has strict occupancy limits per room for safety regulations. Dad, who had been watching this exchange with growing impatience, finally spoke. Brooke, I think you're being unnecessarily difficult about this. Relationships require flexibility. This trip is about family, and Megan is going to be family. His words stung more than Jake's had. My father, who had always been my biggest champion, was now dismissing my boundaries as being difficult. I understand that, I said carefully, but this trip has been planned for months with a specific budget and group in mind. I've already stretched my finances significantly to make it happen. The conversation mercifully shifted when Megan's father asked about their wedding plans, but the damage was done. An invisible line had been drawn, with my parents and Jake on one side and me on the other. Only my grandparents seemed to understand my position. After dinner, as people mingled in the living room, Grandma Ruth pulled me aside. Don't let them pressure you, she whispered. Harold, and I think you're being more than reasonable. This trip was your gift, planned your way. Her support meant everything, but it didn't erase the hurt of my parents' and brother's attitudes. The next day, I met my friend Samantha for coffee, needing to vent to someone outside the family. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, I told her after explaining the situation. Am I being unreasonable? Absolutely not, Samantha said firmly. You're not a travel agency or a bank. You planned a specific trip as a gift. They should be grateful, not demanding more. Her validation helped, but the situation continued to deteriorate. Over the next week, I received several texts from Jake, each more passive-aggressive than the last. Megan was crying last night about the trip. Hope you're happy. I guess some people just can't accept new family members. If you were in our position, we would have included your partner. I didn't respond to any of them. Ordering travel-sized toiletries for my grandparents. But the peace didn't last. 10 days before our departure date, Mom called to invite me to another family dinner. We really need to resolve this Dubai situation, she said. Your father has some ideas he wants to discuss. I should have recognized the setup. But part of me still believed we could find a reasonable solution. So I agreed to come, despite the anxiety that had begun to accompany any family interaction. The dinner was just my immediate family, Mom, Dad, Jake, and Megan. My grandparents weren't invited, which should have been my first clue that this wasn't going to be a fair conversation. Dad waited until after the main course to bring up the subject. Brooke, we've been thinking about the Dubai trip, and we believe we've found a solution that will work for everyone. We think the best option is for you to let Megan take your place. The fork clattered against my plate. Excuse me. Just hear me out, Dad continued, using his practical business voice. You've been to Dubai before for that work conference. You've seen the Burj Khalifa already. This would be Megan's first international trip, and it would be a wonderful welcome to the family. My voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. $26,000 generous. And we appreciate that, Dad said quickly. But sometimes generosity means more than money. Sometimes it's about sacrifice. I looked at Jake and Megan, who were suspiciously quiet. Jake avoided my eyes, while Megan studied her engagement ring with exaggerated interest. This isn't fair, I said finally. This was meant to be a family celebration that I've been planning for months. I took time off work. I've been looking forward to this experience with all of you. We'll plan another trip that includes everyone next time, Dad offered, as if that resolved everything. With whose money? I asked pointedly. The question hung in the air, unanswered. That dinner ended with nothing resolved. I drove home in tears, a mixture of hurt and anger making it difficult to see the road. By the time I reached my apartment, one thing had become clear. This situation had moved beyond a simple disagreement about travel arrangements. It had revealed fundamental truths about my family dynamics that I could no longer ignore. Hope flickered within me. Perhaps he was calling to apologize, to acknowledge that asking me to give up my spot on a trip I'd funded was unreasonable. I was wrong. Brooke. He began without preamble, his tone businesslike. I've been thinking more about our Dubai situation, and I've made a decision. The way he said decision singular, not plural, sent a chill through me. This wasn't going to be a discussion. I think Megan should go instead of you, he continued. She's going to be family. And this would be a wonderful way to welcome her. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. The audacity of his statement had knocked the wind out of me. Dad, I finally managed. You've already seen the Burj Khalifa and those fancy hotels. This would be all new for Megan. That was a 2-day business conference where I barely left the hotel, I said, my voice rising. And that's completely beside the point. This trip was my gift to celebrate your anniversary. I should be there. Well, the best gift would be ensuring our whole family feels included, he replied. Including our newest member. She's not family yet, I said, immediately regretting the words even though they were technically true. They would only make me sound petty. Dad's voice hardened. That's exactly the problem, Brooke. This attitude of yours is creating division. Jake is very upset that you're being so unwelcoming to his fiancée. Unwelcoming? I echoed in disbelief. Dad, I've been nothing but polite to Megan. Not wanting to add a last-minute guest to an expensive, carefully planned trip isn't being unwelcoming. It comes across that way, he insisted. And to be frank, your brother doesn't have the financial means to give Megan these kinds of experiences. You do. You should be willing to share your blessings. The implication that I was somehow obligated to fund luxury experiences for my brother's girlfriend of a few months because I had blessings to share felt like a slap in the face. Dad, I worked incredibly hard for what I have, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. No one handed me anything. I earned my scholarships, my job, every dollar in my bank account. And no one saying otherwise, he replied dismissively. But family helps family. Your mother and I have always taught you that. Yes, family helps family, I agreed. Which is why I spent $26,000 on this trip for all of us in the first place. How is that not helping? It's not about the money, Brooke. Clearly it is, since no one is offering to reimburse me for my spot if I give it up. I shot back. A heavy sigh from his end. I thought you'd be more understanding. If you're so concerned about the money, we can discuss paying you back for your portion. Though I think that misses the point entirely. The conversation was going in circles. Dad had clearly made up his mind before calling me. This wasn't a discussion, it was a notification. Look, he said, his tone shifting to what I recognized as his compromise voice, though his offers rarely felt like actual compromises. If you're really set on going, we could try to work something out. Maybe you could share a room with your grandparents so Megan could have your room. I almost laughed at the absurdity of his suggestion. You want me to give up the room I paid for to sleep on a rollaway bed in my grandparents' room? On a trip that I funded entirely myself. When you put it like that, you make it sound unreasonable. He said, frustration evident in his voice. Because it is unreasonable, Dad. This whole conversation is unreasonable. I think you're being selfish, he said flatly. Energy and savings into creating a perfect experience for everyone. Now I was being called selfish for not wanting to be pushed out of my own gift. I can't believe you'd say that to me, I said. Then you should want us to enjoy it without family tension. Having you and Megan at odds would ruin the experience. We're not at odds. I don't even know her. She's the one who keeps pushing to be included in a trip that was planned months before Jake even met her. Dad's voice turned cold. I'm disappointed in your attitude, Brooke. I raised you to be more generous than this. Tears burned in my eyes. And I thought you raised me to have self-respect and boundaries. The conversation deteriorated from there. Dad accused me of being materialistic, of caring more about money than family harmony. I tried to explain that this wasn't about the money, but about respect for the gift I'd given and the effort I'd invested. We talked in circles until finally, exhausted and hurt, tears streaming down my face. The father who had always been my champion, who had proudly introduced me as his financial wizard daughter, was now treating me like an ATM and an inconvenience. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Please consider what your father said. This is very important to Jake. And we don't want any tension during our anniversary celebration. Sometimes being the bigger person means making sacrifices. I know you understand." Her message only deepened the wound. Rather than standing up for me, she was reinforcing Dad's unreasonable demand. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. Unable to focus on spreadsheets and client meetings while my personal life imploded. Around noon, my phone lit up with texts from Jake. "Dad told me about your conversation. I can't believe you're being so selfish. Megan is crying because she feels unwelcome in this family. If you really cared about Mom and Dad's anniversary, you'd want everyone to be happy." Each message twisted the knife deeper. I didn't respond, knowing anything I said would only escalate the situation. I spent the day alternating between tears and anger, reaching out to friends who expressed outrage on my behalf. My friend Alicia offered to come over with wine and takeout, a gesture of support I gratefully accepted. "They're gaslighting you," she said bluntly as we sat on my couch that evening. "Making you think you're crazy or selfish for having a completely reasonable boundary." Her validation helped. But it didn't erase the pain of my family's betrayal. The final blow came 3 days later. My phone rang at 7:15 a.m. "Dad again." "Brooke," he said, his tone clipped and businesslike. "I wanted to let you know I've spoken with the hotel. Since all the reservations are in your name, I had to call and explain the situation. I had to use your confirmation email to verify the booking, but they've made the change. I think this is for the best." "You went through my emails?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You forwarded all the confirmations to the family email address you set up, remember? I just accessed it from there." He was right. I had created a shared email account to keep all travel documents in one place, accessible to everyone. I never imagined it would be used against me like this. "I can't believe you did this," I said, struggling to form coherent thoughts through the shock. "You changed reservations I paid for without even consulting me." "We did consult you," he countered. "You were being unreasonable. So we had to take matters into our own hands. Those are my reservations. I paid for them. And we appreciate that," he said, his tone softening slightly in what felt like practiced diplomacy. "We'll pay you back for your portion. But this is what's happening now." After he hung up, I broke down completely. The betrayal was so profound, so unexpected from the people I trusted most. Megan will be joining us. Brooke has generously offered to sit this one out since she's been to Dubai before. "We'll miss you, honey, but we'll take lots of pictures." The public rewriting of what had happened was the final insult. Not only had they taken my trip from me, but they were now painting it as my choice, my generous offer. I didn't respond to the group chat. I couldn't trust myself to say anything that wouldn't permanently damage my family relationships. Instead, I called my therapist and scheduled an emergency session. Then I turned off my phone, drew the blinds, and allowed myself to fully feel the devastating pain of betrayal by the people I loved most. The week following my father's phone call about changing the reservation was the darkest I'd experienced since my college boyfriend cheated on me with my roommate. I moved through my days in a fog, going through the motions at work, but unable to focus on anything beyond the most basic tasks. My boss, Natalie, noticed my distraction during a client presentation where I mixed up some key figures, something that had never happened before. "Brooke, is everything okay?" she asked afterward, concern evident in her voice. "This isn't like you." I considered giving a generic, "I'm fine" response, but something in her genuine concern broke through my defenses. Before I knew it, I was crying in her office, the whole story spilling out between sobs. To my surprise, Natalie didn't offer platitudes or tell me to focus on work. Instead, she listened intently, her expression shifting from concern to outrage. That is absolutely unacceptable, she said when I'd finished. Family or not, what they've done is essentially theft. I don't know what to do, I admitted, dabbing at my eyes with a tissue. Part of me wants to call the hotel and explain that my father made unauthorized changes to my reservation. But that would create an even bigger family rift. Natalie leaned forward. Brooke, you're one of my best analysts because you can see situations clearly and make tough decisions based on facts, not emotions. I want you to try to look at this situation the same way. Her words resonated with me. I spent my days advising clients on logical financial decisions. I created a decision matrix, a technique I often used for complex client situations. I listed my options. 1. Accept the situation, let Megan go in my place. 2. Option 1 would preserve family peace, but at the cost of my self-respect and $26,000. Option 2 might get me back on the trip, but would create immediate family conflict. Option 3 would be financially devastating and punish my grandparents who had done nothing wrong, who had been my voice of reason throughout this ordeal. I keep going in circles, I told her. Every option seems wrong. That's because you're in an impossible situation they created. She replied. But there's another option you haven't considered. What's that? Letting them go on this trip, writing off the money as an expensive lesson about your family's true colors, and using this as a turning point to establish healthier boundaries going forward. Her suggestion hit me like a revelation. I'd been so focused on this specific situation, the trip, the money, the immediate betrayal, that I hadn't stepped back to see the bigger pattern it revealed. This wasn't just about a vacation. It was about a lifetime of subtle inequities in how my brother and I were treated. It was about my family viewing my financial success as a resource they were entitled to rather than something I'd earned through hard work. It was about respect, or the lack thereof. The next morning, I received a call from Grandma Ruth. Brooke, darling, I need to tell you something, she said, her voice uncharacteristically serious. Your grandfather and I have decided not to go to Dubai. What? Why? I asked, genuinely shocked. Because what they're doing to you is wrong, she said firmly. I appreciate that more than I can say, but I don't want you to miss this experience. You and Grandpa were always meant to be part of this trip. There will be other trips, she said. Maybe you and I can go somewhere nice together instead. Paris, perhaps? I've always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. Her unwavering support gave me strength. If my elderly grandparents could take such a clear ethical stand, surely I could find the courage to do the same. That afternoon, I scheduled an appointment with a therapist specializing in family dynamics. Dr. Patterson listened to my story without interruption, taking occasional notes. What you're describing is a family system with some deeply entrenched patterns, she said when I finished. Your role has been the responsible achiever, the giver. Your brother's has been the one who receives help. These roles become comfortable for everyone, even when they're not healthy. So, what do I do about Dubai? I asked. That depends on what outcome you're hoping for, she replied. If you're looking for them to suddenly recognize the unfairness and apologize, I think you'll be disappointed. From what you've described, they've already rationalized their behavior. I guess I just want to handle this in a way I won't regret later, I admitted. Then I suggest responding from your values. Not your hurt, she advised. What matters most to you beyond this specific situation? I thought about her question carefully. Self-respect, honesty, fairness. Being treated with the same consideration I show others. Those are good values to act from, she nodded. What would honoring those values look like in this situation? Our session helped clarify my thoughts. I couldn't control my family's behavior, but I could control my response to it. And I wanted my response to reflect the person I aspired to be, whether the trip happened or not. The next day at work, my boss Natalie stopped by my desk. How are you holding up? She asked quietly. Better, I think, I replied. I'm starting to get perspective. She nodded approvingly. Good. By the way, I noticed you haven't taken a proper vacation since you started here 3 years ago. Just that long weekend in Chicago last fall. I've been saving my time off for Dubai, I explained. Well, those vacation days are yours regardless. I think you should use them. Take some time for yourself. Her suggestion planted a seed. Maybe instead of fighting to reclaim my spot on a trip that was now tainted with bad feelings, I could plan something just for me, a different kind of healing experience. That evening, I received a text from Jake. Dad said you're being difficult about the Dubai changes. Why can't you just be happy for me and Megan? The message would have sent me spiraling a few days earlier, but now I felt a strange calm. My brother's self-centeredness wasn't new. It was just more obvious now. Instead of responding to Jake, I called my grandparents to try once more to convince them to go on the trip. We've made our decision, Grandpa Harold said firmly. It wouldn't feel right. Besides, Grandma Ruth added, I spoke with Diana yesterday, and she barely mentioned our decision not to go. Something fundamental had shifted in my family dynamic, and pretending otherwise wouldn't help anyone. After much reflection, I made my decision. I wouldn't fight the changes my father had made. I wouldn't cancel the trip out of spite. I wouldn't take legal action. Instead, I would accept this as an expensive but valuable lesson about my family and use it as a catalyst to establish healthier boundaries going forward. I drafted an email to my entire family. While I am deeply hurt by how this situation was handled, I've decided not to contest the changes Dad has made to the reservations. The trip was meant to be a gift, an expression of my love and appreciation for our family. I spent months planning every detail and allocated a significant portion of my savings to make it special for everyone. Having my contribution dismissed and my presence deemed unnecessary has been painful beyond words. I will not be joining you in Dubai, nor will I be funding any future family trips. I need time and space to reconsider the dynamics of our relationships and to establish boundaries that ensure mutual respect. I hope you enjoy the experience I created for you. Brooke. I read the email a dozen times before sending it, ensuring it expressed my feelings honestly without descending into accusations or bitterness. Then I clicked send and turned off my phone, giving myself permission to disconnect from the situation. The response was immediate and predictable. Dad called repeatedly, leaving voicemails that ranged from defensive, "You're completely mischaracterizing what happened," to guilt-inducing, "Your mother is in tears over this." Mom sent text messages about healing the family rift before it's too late. Jake accused me of ruining everything as usual. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I booked myself a solo trip to Italy, something I'd always wanted to do but had postponed in favor of more practical financial decisions. For once, I would prioritize my own joy without guilt. My boss, Natalie, upon hearing my plans, surprised me with an unexpected show of support. "Use the office's travel agent," she insisted. "She gets corporate rates at luxury hotels. And I'm approving an extra week of paid leave. You've more than earned it with your performance last quarter." Her kindness, alongside my grandparents' solidarity and my friends' unwavering support, showed me that while some relationships in my life were changing in painful ways, others were revealing their true strength. As my family's departure date for Dubai approached, I focused on my own healing. I deleted social media apps from my phone, knowing I would be tempted to torture myself with their vacation photos. I threw myself into planning my Italian adventure, researching local experiences off the tourist path. And I continued my sessions with Dr. Patterson, unpacking the family patterns that had contributed to our current situation. But for perhaps the first time in my life, I stood firm in my decision to prioritize my own well-being over family harmony at any cost. The Dubai trip that had once represented my generous gift had transformed into something entirely different, a painful but powerful catalyst for growth, self-respect, and new beginnings. The morning my family was scheduled to leave for Dubai, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest that made it difficult to breathe. Despite my resolution to stand firm in my decision, part of me still couldn't believe they were actually going on this trip without me, the trip I had meticulously planned and completely funded. After a restless night, I reached for my phone before even getting out of bed, a habit I'd been trying to break. There was an email from my father sent at 4:38 a.m., likely just before they left for the airport. "Brooke, your mother and I are disappointed by your dramatic reaction to what should have been a simple family adjustment. Your spot on the desert safari and other activities will remain open. Think about what really matters in life. It's not money or getting your way, it's family. Dad. His email sparked something in me, not the guilt he clearly intended, but a clarifying anger that finally pushed me to fully articulate my feelings. I spent the morning crafting a detailed email to my entire family, no longer constrained by fear of conflict or desire to keep peace at my own expense. Dear family, as it seems there are significant misunderstandings about both my feelings and the facts of the situation. This trip was conceived, planned, and funded entirely by me as a gift to celebrate Mom and Dad's anniversary. I spent 6 months researching and arranging every detail, from the desert safari to the anniversary dinner at Burj Khalifa. I allocated $26,000 of my personal savings, money I earned through years of hard work and careful financial management, to create this experience for our family. The issue was never about accommodating Megan. When Jake and Megan became engaged, I explained that adding another person 3 weeks before departure would require restructuring all reservations and significantly increasing costs. Rather than respecting this reality, you then presented this to the family as me generously offering to stay behind. This was neither true nor respectful of my agency as an adult who made significant financial sacrifices to gift this trip. This situation has revealed painful truths about our family dynamics that I can no longer ignore. My generosity has been taken for granted, my boundaries disregarded, and my feelings dismissed. The message sent is clear: my presence is less valued than my financial contribution. I wish you all a wonderful trip. The experiences I arranged are truly special, and I hope you enjoy them. But please understand that this situation has fundamentally changed how I view our family relationships, and moving forward, I will be establishing clearer boundaries around both my finances and my emotional investment. I hope we can eventually have an honest conversation about this when everyone returns. But that will require acknowledgement of how hurtful this situation has been, rather than dismissing my feelings as dramatic or selfish. Brooke. I read the email several times, checking that it expressed my feelings honestly without veering into accusations that would only escalate the conflict. Then I took a deep breath and hit send. The response was almost immediate and exactly what I expected. Dad replied with a terse message: "You're overreacting as usual. This isn't the time or place for this conversation." Mom's response came an hour later: "Brooke, I'm heartbroken that you've chosen to send this just as we're beginning our journey. This is ruining what should be a happy anniversary celebration. I pray you'll find it in your heart to forgive whatever perceived slights you're holding onto." The word perceived felt like a slap. There was nothing perceived about being removed from reservations I had paid for. Jake didn't respond directly, but within hours, he and Megan had posted photos on social media. Selfies at the airport with the caption "Dubai bound." Blessed family first, and making sure to tag me so I would see it. I muted their accounts immediately, but not before the image of Megan wearing a new designer sun hat and posing with their first-class boarding passes, which I had paid for, seared itself into my brain. I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by the travel guides and printouts of Dubai attractions I'd studied so carefully, and finally allowed myself to cry without restraint. The following days were surreal. Through the magic of social media algorithms, despite muting my family's accounts, their Dubai photos kept appearing in my feed via mutual connections who commented or were tagged. I saw them enjoying the desert safari I had booked, standing in front of the Burj Khalifa where I had arranged a special tour, lounging by the hotel pool where I should have been. Most painful were the anniversary dinner photos from at Mosphere restaurant, where I had worked with the staff to arrange a special cake and champagne toast, requesting a table by the window for the perfect view. In the photos, everyone looked happy: my parents, Jake, Megan, even my grandparents who had ultimately decided to go after all. Their expressions betrayed no awareness of the person missing from the frame, the person who had made it all possible. 3 days into their trip, I deleted all social media apps from my phone. The constant reminders were too painful, and watching the experience I had created unfold without me felt like repeatedly reopening a wound. My friend Alicia, concerned about my isolation, Organized an impromptu weekend trip to a nearby beach town with a few close friends. You shouldn't be alone right now, she insisted. Let us distract you. Their gesture touched me deeply. We spent the weekend walking on the beach, trying local restaurants, and deliberately not discussing my family situation unless I brought it up. For brief moments, I found myself laughing genuinely, the weight on my chest lifting temporarily. When I returned home Sunday evening, I found a voicemail from Grandma Ruth. "Brooke, darling," her voice wavered. "I need to explain why we came on this trip after all. Your grandfather's health took a turn last month, nothing serious yet. But the doctor warned that long flights might not be possible for him much longer. We wanted to take this opportunity while he still could. I feel terrible about it, knowing how you've been treated. Please call me when you can." Her message both comforted and pained me. I understood their decision and certainly didn't begrudge my grandfather this experience given his health concerns. But it also underscored how completely alone I was in standing up to my family's treatment of me. I returned to work the following Monday, throwing myself into projects with an intensity that both impressed and concerned my colleagues. My boss, Natalie, stopped by my desk midweek. "You're working through lunch again," she observed. "Everything okay?" "Just focused," I replied, not looking up from my computer. "Your family's in Dubai now, right?" she asked carefully. I nodded, still not meeting her eyes. "Listen," she said, pulling up a chair. "I rarely share personal stories at work, but I think you should hear this. My sister and I didn't speak for 3 years after a similar situation. She expected me to fund a family vacation and then dictated all the terms. It was the hardest period of my life. Though your grandparents have mentioned several times that they wish you were here. Your mother's anniversary dinner was perfect. The restaurant staff mentioned the special arrangements you'd made, which was thoughtful. I think when we return, we should all sit down and discuss this situation like adults. Your email contained many mischaracterizations of what happened, and it's important we clear the air. We'll be bringing you back some nice souvenirs." Dad. His message, particularly the dismissal of my perspective as mischaracterizations and the patronizing offer of souvenirs from a trip I had funded but been excluded from, confirmed that he still didn't understand, or wouldn't acknowledge, the fundamental issue. This wasn't about souvenirs or misunderstandings, it was about respect and boundaries. I didn't respond to his email. Instead, I focused on preparing for my upcoming solo trip to Italy, which now symbolized my commitment to prioritizing my own well-being. I researched cooking classes in Florence, hiking trails along the Amalfi Coast, and small local museums off the typical tourist path. When my family returned from Dubai, the desert safari was amazing, though your father got terribly sunburned. And you should have seen Jake on the camel. He was absolutely terrified. I listened silently. The phrase "you should have seen" particularly jarring given the circumstances. "Mom," I finally interrupted. "I planned and paid for that entire experience. We brought you a beautiful cashmere pashmina from the souk. I thought that would make things better." Her response confirmed what I had begun to suspect. My family genuinely didn't understand the depth of the betrayal I felt. In their minds, this had been a minor disagreement that could be smoothed over with a gift, not a fundamental breach of trust and respect. The realization was both painful and freeing. I couldn't make them understand if they weren't willing to see it. "Thought you might like this, Dad." The watch, which must have cost several $1,000s, felt less like an apology and more like an attempted transaction, as if the right price tag could erase what had happened. I placed it in my dresser drawer unworn. In the weeks that followed, I declined the usual weekly family dinners, making excuses about work commitments. I limited my communication to brief, polite texts, mainly to my grandparents who continued to express their support privately. The space I created allowed me to see our family dynamics with new clarity. My boundaries being dismissed were now impossible to unsee. The Dubai trip hadn't created these dynamics, it had merely exposed them in a way I could no longer ignore. And while the revelation was painful, it also offered an opportunity for growth and change that I was finally ready to embrace. 2 months after the Dubai trip, Life had settled into a new normal that felt both strange and increasingly comfortable. I had established a routine that prioritized my well-being: morning runs before work, evening cooking classes. Then came the expected attempt to return to business as usual. Dad called one Tuesday evening, his tone casual as if nothing significant had happened between us. "Your mother's planning a birthday dinner for Jake this Saturday. 6 o'clock at the house. She's making that pasta you like." No acknowledgement of our strained relationship. No mention of Dubai. "What plans could be more important than your brother's birthday?" he asked, the edge in his voice revealing his frustration. "My plans are personal, Dad. I'll send Jake a card and gift." The silence that followed spoke volumes. My father wasn't accustomed to me declining family events or maintaining boundaries when pressured. "Brooke," he finally said, "I think you've made your point. It's time to move past this Dubai business. Your mother misses you." "I'm not trying to make a point or punish anyone," I explained carefully. "I'm taking time to process how I feel about our family dynamics and establish healthier boundaries. That's not something that can be rushed to meet someone else's timeline." "Boundaries. I suppose that's good," he conceded reluctantly. "But don't let them turn you against your family. We've always wanted what's best for you." "I know you believe that, Dad," I said. And he had at least acknowledged my perspective, however reluctantly. Similar conversations followed with my mother, who initially tried guilt. I cry myself to sleep wondering where I went wrong as a mother, before gradually accepting that my distance wasn't a punishment, but a necessary healing process. Jake, predictably, was less receptive. His text messages oscillated between accusations, "You're tearing this family apart with your selfishness," and backhanded olive branches, "If you can get over yourself." Continued to post carefully curated photos of herself being embraced by my parents with captions like, "So blessed to have found such a welcoming family, #blessed, #family first." I had muted her accounts, but occasionally friends would mention seeing these posts, their discomfort evident. Through it all, my grandparents remained my most consistent supporters. Grandma Ruth called weekly, her straightforward wisdom providing perspective when I doubted myself. "Your grandfather and I participated in that way of thinking too, I'm afraid. But times change, and sometimes the younger generation teaches the older one." "Just the two of us," I agreed, cautiously optimistic about the invitation. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between her house and my apartment. After awkward small talk about the weather and her garden, she took a deep breath and said something I never expected to hear. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened with the Dubai trip," she began, fiddling with her napkin. "At first, I was just focused on keeping peace in the family, which usually means getting you to accommodate whatever Jake needs." She paused, meeting my eyes. "It wasn't fair to you. Not just with Dubai, but with many things over the years." Her acknowledgement, however belated, felt like a weight lifting from my chest. We talked for over 2 hours. But I'm trying to see things differently now. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a start, a small crack in the family dynamics that had seemed so immutable. My relationship with Jake remained strained, though there were fleeting moments of connection, a shared laugh at a family gathering I eventually attended, a surprisingly thoughtful birthday card that suggested someone else, likely our mother, had guided his choice. The most profound changes, however, were within myself. I recognized it as a necessary catalyst that had forced me to examine and restructure relationships that had been unhealthy for years. I had planned my solo trip to Italy with the same attention to detail I'd once devoted to the family Dubai trip. But with one crucial difference, every decision centered on my own interests and desires. I scheduled a cooking class in Florence, booked a small apartment in Rome with a view of the Pantheon. Without the pressure of managing others' experiences or sublimating my preferences to maintain harmony, I discovered new aspects of myself, an unexpected love of architectural history, a talent for landscape photography, a willingness to try foods I'd previously avoided. I also met people who expanded my perspective, a retired professor from London who became an impromptu tour guide through the Vatican museums, a family from Australia who invited me to join their table at a crowded restaurant, a local art student who showed me hidden corners of Florence tourists rarely discovered. One evening in a small restaurant in Rome, I struck up a conversation with Nathan, an American architect working on a restoration project nearby. What began as casual dinner conversation extended to coffee the next morning and an impromptu tour of his project site. His genuine interest in my thoughts and respect for my opinions highlighted how relationships should feel: balanced, mutually respectful, without constant calculation of who owed what to whom. We exchanged contact information before I left Italy, and our conversations continued after I returned home. Easy. My boss, Natalie, enthusiastically supported my application. "You've always had the skills," she told me during my interview. "But now you have the confidence to match. That's what leadership requires." I received the promotion, which came with a significant salary increase. Rather than using the additional income to fund family expenses or gifts as I might have in the past, I increased my retirement contributions, established a proper emergency fund, and allocated a portion for experiences that brought me joy. My relationship with Dad remained the most visibly changed. The man who had once been my hero, who had proudly introduced me as his financial wizard, now seemed uncertain how to interact with me. Our conversations remained cordial, but lacked the easy closeness we'd once shared. The Dubai betrayal had revealed aspects of his character I couldn't unsee: a willingness to exploit my generosity, a pattern of favoring Jake's wants over my needs, a fundamental lack of respect for my autonomy. I grieved this loss even as I accepted it as necessary. Dr. Patterson helped me understand that maintaining certain boundaries didn't mean I loved my father less. It meant I was finally loving myself enough. As the one-year anniversary of the Dubai trip approached, I reflected on everything that had changed. The $26,000 I had spent on that trip, money I would never get back, now seemed less like a financial loss and more like the cost of an essential education. It had taught me about my own worth, about the importance of boundaries, about the difference between generosity and self-sacrifice. The family dynamics hadn't transformed completely. Jake still occasionally expected financial help, though now my parents thought twice before suggesting I should be the one to provide it. Dad still sometimes made dismissive comments about my excessive boundaries, though he mostly respected them. Mom made genuine efforts to treat her children more equitably, though old patterns occasionally resurfaced. But I had changed fundamentally. Their perspective on family, shaped by decades of experience and their own mistakes, provided invaluable wisdom as I navigated this new terrain. It's how they respond when you finally say enough. One evening, as I prepared for a dinner date with Nathan, who had relocated to Boston for a new project, I received a text from Jake. "Need to borrow $2,000 for car repairs. Can you transfer it today?" No greeting, no context, no acknowledgement of the presumption. Just an expectation that I would once again open my wallet without question. A year earlier, I would have immediately transferred the money, perhaps with a gentle reminder that I wasn't an ATM, but ultimately prioritizing family harmony over my own boundaries. Now, I typed a different response. "I'm not in a position to lend money at the moment. Hope you can work something out with the mechanic. Many offer payment plans." His angry response came immediately. "Seriously? I know how much you make. You're just being petty because of Dubai." I didn't defend myself or engage with his accusation. Instead, I silenced my phone, applied a final touch of lipstick, and headed out to meet Nathan, leaving Jake's message unanswered. As I walked to the restaurant, I realized I felt no guilt, no anxiety about the conflict I had just created. Only a calm certainty that I had responded in a way that honored my own boundaries and financial well-being. The most expensive lesson of my life wasn't the $26,000 trip I funded but never attended. It was learning that I deserve better, and I have the strength to demand it. While I still love my family, I now know my worth isn't determined by what I can give them. True generosity flows from self-respect, not self-sacrifice. And sometimes, the most generous thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to finally say no. I learned that my story isn't unique. Many of us struggle with family dynamics that take advantage of our generosity and dismiss our boundaries. Have you experienced something similar? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content about navigating complex family relationships and personal growth. Remember that standing up for yourself doesn't mean you love your family any less. It means you're finally recognizing your own worth. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And I wish you the courage to honor your own boundaries, whatever they may be.